Hi, welcome to Unity Spiritual Center's inspirational message for this week. I'm Reverend Sharon Ketchum, and we're bringing the message to you virtually, courtesy of the coronavirus. We're going to begin today's service with a piece of music. It's a new song to many of you, but it's by our friend Eddie Watkins Jr. I'm the place where God shows up. This was taped before quarantine, so don't worry about people being close, even though holding hands perhaps.
Am I strong enough to bear the burdens that sometimes come living this thing called life? Am I wise enough to make the right decisions when I'm standing at the fork in the road? Sometimes I wonder and ponder, only to realize I'm not alone and there's nothing I have to do on my own, because I am the place where God lives, moves and breathes and has its being. I am the place where God shows up. I am the place where God lives, moves and breathes and has its being. I am the place where God shows up. Will I have enough to do the things I need to do to take care of myself? Will I have the health of mind and body to live a life of grace and wholeness? Sometimes I wonder and ponder, only to realize I'm not alone and there's nothing I have to do on my own, because I am the place where God lives, moves and breathes and has its being. I am the place where God shows up. I am the place where God lives, moves and breathes and has its being. I am the place where God shows up. I am the place. I am the place where God lives. You are the place. Moves and breathes and has we are the place. I am the place where God shows up. I am the place. I am the place where God you are the place. We are the place. I am the place where God shows up. I want you to clap your hands and sing it with me. I am the place where God lives, moves and breathes and has its being. I am the place where God shows up. I am the place where God lives, moves and breathes and has its being. I am the place where God shows up. I am the place where God lives, moves and breathes and has its being. I am the place where God shows up. I am the place where God lives, moves and breathes and has its being. I am the place where God shows up. Eddie Watkins,
Hope you enjoyed
some more of
that
that?
as much as
Can we
I
have some
did.
more of that?
Yeah. Well, here we are with the 5 invitations, what dying can teach us about living. It seemed an appropriate topic right now, since death really is a hot topic, if you will. Certainly the coronavirus being around, and of course the death of George Floyd, and just many of the issues. And it's a time to talk about not death in the sense as a dead end, but death is a sense of what it can really teach us about living life to the fullest. So the first one we talked about really is the invitation not to wait, because we never know when our last day is going to be. And when we go ahead and do those things our passion tells us to do, our life is fulfilled and we don't live a life that ends in regret. Last week we talked about the second invitation about welcome everything. Don't push anything away, because life is about this whole variety of experiences, the happy and the sad and the joy-filled and the grieving, and it's all part of life, knowing that we are alive, that we really, it's about accepting life as is and really enjoying it. Today is the third invitation, and it is an invitation to bring your whole self into the experience. I have this little picture here of a puzzle with a missing piece, and it kind of reminds me of when I was a kid. Somebody in the family would always steal one of the pieces of the family puzzle, so they got to put the last piece in and make it complete. Very often with us, we just don't want that piece of the puzzle to show. There's a part of us that we feel if it showed would make us incomplete. Kind of interesting how that goes, huh? So imagine if you were a three-dimensional puzzle. And all of you, all the parts of you, the outer and the inner were all there, and you were putting this puzzle together. And maybe you start with something familiar, like your ears or your eyes. I mean, the eyes are the windows of the soul, so that would be a good place to start. And you're going along pretty good. And then you come across a part that you really don't like. It's a part of you that maybe is fearful, or part of you that feels less than, a part of you that still feels like, it might need work. And if every time you came across one of those pieces, you left it out of this three-dimensional puzzle of you, you'd be so fragmented, you wouldn't be recognizable. It's really important that the whole of the puzzle is there. Because those parts we don't want to put in, those are the parts of our vulnerability. And where we're vulnerable is where we grow, it's where we connect to other people. It allows us to have empathy for one another. It allows us to be authentic in the way that we show up. Another way of looking at this, you may wonder, I have this little potato head over here. Do you remember these? Well, this is a pirate potato head. And suppose that this was a representation of me. And I looked at this and I thought, oh, I don't like that nose. It's really big. I don't like that part of me that's too loud sometimes or too exuberant. We'll leave that off. That's not necessary. And then I look at this and there's an imperfect set of eyes there. Look at that. There is a patch over one of the eyes. Well, I don't want people to know that I'm so imperfect, that I'm broken there, so I'll take that part off. Who knows what part that might represent to me, that sometimes I don't like the way I look at the world. Sometimes I don't have a great understanding of it, so I don't want that to get out there. And these ears, they're ugly. They're way so big. Things would be better if I didn't put those on. I would look a whole lot more perfect. And oh, speaking of imperfection, look at this mouth. There's a gap between the teeth. Who wants to have a gap between their teeth? Get rid of that one. And then, oh, talk about awful taste. This pirate's hat. This is kind of silly and dated. Yeah, some of my ideas might be silly and dated. So when I put the puzzle together, I'm going to leave that off. And what do I have left? A lump of nothing with some arms and feet. This doesn't all look like my pirate self that was there before. And that's what happens when we show up and don't allow all of ourselves to show up. We only show up partially. It's like when we go into learning about ourselves, we're going to wander into some, shall we call them, undesirable neighborhoods. Places that we wish didn't exist, but they do. That's who we are. We have some parts that need to be worked on. It kind of reminds, I keep thinking of Mr. Rogers, won't you be my neighbor? Maybe we should sing that to parts of ourselves. Won't you be my neighbor? The part of you, my shadow self, that part of you that I don't want. Let me bring it in and make myself whole. Because what happens is when we have parts of ourselves that we don't want to put back into the puzzle, parts to acknowledge, we're going to meet people that exhibit those parts that we're embarrassed about. You know what's going to happen? Boom. Yeah, the button gets pushed. Those people drive us crazy. We don't like them. We're judgmental about them. It's just not a good relationship is going to happen there, because they just are showing us the part of ourselves that we don't want the whole world to know about. Yeah, it's embarrassing just showing that up. It is a phrase that I'm always that was wonderful, called Not My Monkey, Not My Circus, not to pick up things that aren't ours. So when we're putting ourselves together, it's not like we take characteristics that don't belong to us. We're not going to take fault for something we see in the world and say that's us. But on the other hand, there's another little monkey quote that comes to mind at this. It says, don't sell your soul to buy peanuts for the monkey. Don't sell your soul to buy peanuts for the monkey. In other words, don't sell off part of yourself that you think is less than, because something in your monkey mind says it's hungry and needs to be fed. Something in this mind that gets so busy, that gets so caught up in outer circumstance, that's going to steal part of your soul. Yeah, okay? So as we put ourselves together from all those kind of emotional parts and intellectual parts and experience and memories, there's another part, and that's the roles that we play in life. And there's multiple roles that we play in life, and they're not good or bad roles. They're just choices that we make. But knowing that in making these choices, we're always also making choices not to be in another role. And, you know, life keeps changing on us, right? It just is, boy, I mean, the last 120 days now, I mean, we really know about life's changes. And even if we think beyond the last 4 months, we know that life is changing, that we're not who we were 10 years ago, and we're not who we're going to be 10 years from now. And so our roles also change. But what happens is we can get so attached to a role that we limit our ability to choose to do something different. Ram Dass says, don't be a role, be a soul. Be able to go with the flow. Say, yeah, this is my role now, but, oh no, something else is needed. See, life changes so much, not just the outer circumstances, but even, say, the roles of the way that we show up within our family, friends, our work environment. Say, for example, you were the nurturer in your family, and then you get sick. You cannot be the nurturer when you are sick. You need to be able to put on another role. You need to be able to put on the role of patient and allow somebody else to be the role of nurturer, which takes nothing away from you. But it's just that shifting of outer circumstances and the choices that we make and how we're going to show up. Say that we had an addiction, that we were an alcoholic, and then we got treatment and we were whole again from that addiction, that we may still be working on it, but the family is no longer, they're going to have to learn new roles to relate to us as we show up in a new role. We're no longer the broken member of the family that needs everybody's whatever, help, sympathy, fixing. Now we are whole and participating in a different way. And even as we go through life, if you think about it, the roles in the first half of life are roles that help us grow and expand and set up house and grow our career, where in the last half of our life, we start looking more inward. We start looking at the wonder and the mystery of life, and the nature of our roles change as long as we don't get so attached to the roles that we're not willing to give them up, that we think that this is who we are as opposed to a choice that we've made. If you're driving down the street and you turn left to get to a place you're going and found out later it was on the right, you are not always a left turn person. You just made a choice at that point. And the next time you can choose to go right. So it is with our roles. They are just choices. They are not who we are. They are not part of those many fragmented pieces that we need to gather in order to show up whole from the experience of life. Roles themselves are really not fully satisfying for our soul's growth. It's not enough for us just to be in a role, because essentially we're playing a role. It's not who we are. It's not sufficient for our well-being. And one of the ways I think that shows up most prevalently is when we get to an experience of pain. Because most of our roles have this avoidance tactic for pain, that we want to do anything but to be in the pain in the moment. One of the favorite sayings people will have, well, tomorrow will be a better day. You're having a bad day today, you're in pain today, you're uncomfortable today, tomorrow will be a better day. You know what? Maybe it won't. And it doesn't matter. Maybe we won't even be here tomorrow. The important thing is to be here in the now. So if we are in pain, to expand our role, to bring those fragments of ourselves together that allows us to be in the pain and to move through it as opposed to avoiding it. As I was working on this talk, a friend of mine and former congregant from Kitchener called, and her son had accidentally overdosed. He's 18 years old. And she had adopted her son. Austin's 18 now. He's probably about 5 or 6 when I met him. And he was a fetal alcohol syndrome baby. So he had some difficulties growing up. And my friend was just a great mother to him. And when we connected to sit in the pain with her, I knew it was not my role as a minister. It was not my role as a friend. It was simply my role as a human being with another human being. And it wasn't comfortable. And tomorrow may or may not be better for her. But in that moment that we were together, there was an authenticity. There was that deep feeling of oneness. Whenever we can be in pain, not be the pain, but sit in the pain, be uncomfortable with another, or be uncomfortable even with ourselves, we're in the pain. It's just this wonderful soul growth. And it was interesting, as we came to the end of our time together, she began to talk about the gifts Austin had brought, allowing other people to expand. The school system now has a couple classrooms for fetal alcohol syndrome children. Just causes a lot of learning disabilities if you're not familiar with the condition. It's the mother having alcohol while pregnant with a child. And so being able to recognize even this close to his death, what a gift he was. And I know in my heart that he absolutely chose the best mother he could have chosen to come into this life experience. Yeah. So why do we want to avoid the pain? Why do we want to let out some of our parts, Let out the imperfect teeth, if you will, whatever that represents for us. Let out that gap with us. Well, I don't know about you, but I have this inner critic that is quite loud most of the time, just telling me all kinds of things. It compares me to others. It praises me. It denigrates me. It devalues me, diminishes me, blames me. Sometimes approves what I do. Sometimes condemns me. Sometimes attacks me. Do you have one of those little voices in your head, that inner critic? And I'll tell you, this is about all kinds of topics. It could be the appearance, job performance, friends, my health, my diet. You can add whatever you want to the list. I'm sure you might have heard the whispers. And the weapons that this inner critic uses are familiar ones to us. It's fear, shame, guilt. Wow. Those are the ones that hurt, right? The fear, the shame, and the guilt that will never be good enough, that we didn't do this, or we should have done this, or we could have done this. And there's a sense that it's my way or the highway from that inner critic. And that's not true. It's not my way or the highway. There are so many roads we can take, whether we're turning left or turning right or going straight ahead. All it is a choice for the moment. It's not who we are. This is our experience. This is our present moment experience. But there's a part of us that so wants to please that inner critic. So, we step into those self-help classes, self-help books. We kind of want to shake things up. And when we go into that self-help section, do you realize the irony of it? This is like tailor-made for the inner critic, because self-help means we're saying, I need to fix the problem of me, that there's something wrong with me, that I am broken, that something needs fixing. And so that puts down that whole spiral again of judgment, and we get that disease of praise and blame. What we really want to do is get beyond these outer symptoms, these outer conditions, and get to that root cause. Where did this habit of self-judgment come from? Because when we sit there in judgment, it steals our life force. It drains us. We all know we have days that we're down on ourselves. We are down as well as down on ourselves. Our souls just, they feel like they're crushed. What we need to step into is an ownership of everything without that judgment, knowing that God does not make garbage. And the allegory in the Genesis of the Bible that says Adam and Eve were kicked out of the Garden of Eden, that Adam and Eve were somehow separated from God, is a story, is an allegory that each of us have done to ourselves. We have each, from time to time, thought God created everything and then there was us. This is all spirit, and then we are over here because we are broken and need to be fixed. And that is not the truth of our being, no matter what the outer conditions, no matter what monkey mind thoughts are going through our mind. We need to move from that idea of either or into an and, both and. So, yeah, maybe sometimes I'm late. Maybe sometimes I'm messy. Maybe sometimes I forget things. And sometimes I'm early. Sometimes I remember amazing things. You see, it's both. It's not that one is bad or one is good. It's a left turn or a right turn. That's all that it is. It's a condition in the moment. And it's part of our life experience. That's how we learn to really express our wholeness, by not being afraid of our screw-ups, not being afraid of our messes, and knowing that we can grow through them. It's not about blame for our wants and desires. It's about knowing that this is a heart expression of our souls that we're learning from time and time again. Now, when I did a 12-step program for the 4 T's, it's a prosperity course, excuse me, and we did an inventory of our strengths and weaknesses. And you know what amazed me as I got through that inventory? Everything I had as a flaw or weakness also showed up as a strength or something I was proud of. That my ability to be messy was also my ability to be creative. That my ability to think about details sometimes slowed me down and sometimes helped things get finished. You see, it really just showed me this whole idea of wholeness really does encompass all of it. And it's only this idea of a relative world that we're in where we have this tendency to pass judgment, want to get rid of parts of ourselves. Which part would you like to get rid of? Would you get rid of your arm? You know, you're not a, oh, here's Mrs. Potato Head. You could take an arm off her. You don't like that? No, of course we wouldn't do that. Would you take the nose off? No. So knowing that, really getting it, that it's all of us that needs to come to the experience. Viktor Frankl said that what is to give light must endure burning. What is to give light must endure burning. So it is with us as we bring our light into the world, as we bring our gifts into the world. It needs to go through some tremendous transformations as we grow. We know as a baby we wouldn't be expecting to bring gifts to the world. And in many ways, each day we are that new birth again. We are that new life that needs to go through transformation and growth so that we can take off the shells, take off anything that is hindering us from being a light of love, unabashed, unconditioned, unhampered in our world. And, you know, we say, yeah, well, you know, I'm working on my spirituality. I'm getting there. I'm working on it. And when I get there, when we talk about what is the spirituality we're talking about when I get there, spirituality is not like walking around in a Zen state all day. It's not sitting on a mountaintop necessarily, meditating all day. To me, I believe that our spirituality is really being able to show up as a human being in all of its many forms. Because if it is all spirit, that includes our humanness, that includes our flaws, and that includes our fun, that includes the highs and the lows. Just the simplicity of being ourselves is showing up as a spiritual being, having this wonderful human experience. One of my favorite pieces of religious art is a painting of raging seas with a fishing boat, and the sailors are all quite upset about these big waves coming over the boat, and Jesus is sleeping. And of course, the story is that the disciples go to Jesus, who's sleeping after a hard day of work, and shaking him awake, saying, help, we're all going to die. You need to do something. Look at the storm. You got to do something, do something. And Jesus wakes up and he says, peace, be still. Peace, be still. And I love that essence, that when we are caught in those storms of emotions, really that feels like it's going to sink us, it's going to kill us. The emotions are so heavy, so intense. And all we need to do is go to that place where we can say, peace, be still. Because when we have an emotion, we have a lot of choices with them. We can repress the emotion, push it down, not ready to deal with it. I'm not going to have this emotion now. Of course, you know what that does to our bodies. It's like when I talked to this mother about her son, and I'm thinking, I need to hold it together. I can't cry. I can't go into my deep grief. And I just took a moment. I could feel it. It was back here in my jaw, and it was behind my eyes. But when I acknowledged that I was repressing it, and I could breathe into it, and it was okay to allow some tears to come. It was okay to be sad and to have grief with her. So that brings us to the other thing we can do with emotion, that's express it. We can repress it or express it. And expressing it is just that, an expression. It is not us. It is a condition that we are moving and having at this moment. But there is a third choice. And for lack of a better word, I'm going to say it's containing the emotion, not repressing it, containing it in the sense that we observe it. We observe, I am feeling sadness. I am feeling grief. I am feeling joy. And we can observe it. Notice where it shows up in our body. Not pass judgment. This is good. This is inappropriate. This is appropriate. Just no judgment at all. Just an observance of, isn't this an interesting human experience I'm having right now? I am having this emotion that makes me feel this way. I'm having these thoughts, whatever that might be. Important thing is to breathe with that emotion and really be aware of where it's showing up in our body. Buddha has a parable of the mustard seed. This woman, Kisa Gautami, had an 8-year-old son who died suddenly. And she took her son and carried him from door to door, asking for somebody to help her. Her son was already dead. There was nothing that could be done. So somebody took her to the Buddha. He said, please, please help me with my son. My son has died. He shouldn't die. He's only 8. Can you help me? And the Buddha said, yes, I can. But first you must do a task. You must bring me back 1 mustard seed from a household in our city where they have not experienced death. She says, oh yes, I will do that, I will do that. And she went from house to house. She spent the whole day going from house to house, asking for a mustard seed if they have not experienced the grief of death. Of course, we know that at the end of the day, she could not find a mustard seed, for every house had experienced death. And what had happened in that experience, in that lesson that Buddha gave her? He didn't try to fix her in the moment. He stayed with her where she was, looking for an answer, looking for a fix, until she was able, through her process, to find her own answers, to find her own way through her grief, as though she was finally no longer feeling isolated, knowing this was a universal experience. She was in the oneness of humanity with all its grief as well as its joy. And she was then able to bury her son. Right now, we are hearing the cries of the world. We're hearing the cries of the world through the pandemic. We are hearing the cries of the world through the racial injustice. As a matter of fact, as I was preparing this message, walking down Washington Avenue, there was a march. No peace, no justice. No peace, no justice. And it struck me that that is true. If there is no justice, no social justice, no divine justice in the world, there can be no peace. There can be no peace. So in Buddhism, they have another way of putting it. They say, if you want others to be happy, practice compassion. If you want to be happy, practice compassion. It's about finding that wonderful balance between wisdom and compassion. They say it's like 2 wings that need to be in balance, and when they do, we can fly away with freedom. Compassion without balance really becomes sentimentality. It's kind of mushy, does not add anything to the situation. And wisdom without compassion becomes cold and cerebral. it doesn't really do anything other than letters, words. It's cold. But when you put them together, that divine wisdom and that deep sense of compassion, of heart self, of universal love, there's a great freedom that allows us to rise above circumstances, to be in the world, but not of the world, to be the observer and the participant, but not own for the world, knowing that there is something bigger, something greater for us to experience. Death teaches us that we do want to experience all. Might not be our choice, but whatever comes our way, we really want to experience it with our whole self. Nothing that we want really to leave behind. So as a spiritual practice for this week, I'm going to, here we go, invite you to bring your whole self to the experience. Don't be a role, be the soul, come from your heart. Start re-educating your inner critic. Maybe that's time for the inner critic to run out of ink or run out of words, and to practice wisdom and compassion to the best of your ability, just so that you can achieve that balance to rise above all that is happening. And I hope you'll be able to join us for a meditation about our heart self. We will work on really having an experience of that wisdom and compassion. Thank you. Well, this is the time of our service that we celebrate our prosperity. First, by beginning with a huge thank you. I'm so grateful for all the people that make this ministry possible, people working behind the scenes, people that donate to this ministry so that we can operate, and so thrilled that we're able to send checks this quarter over to Haven House to help them support in their work. It's just, even though we're not in person, to be able to feel this community in action is just tremendous. You can almost feel the heartbeat of our community. So I'd like to just take a time, a very sacred time, for each of us to reflect on the blessings that have come into our life. Start out with the blessing of our health, the blessing of our friends, the blessing of these summer days, the rainstorms and the sunny days, the still days and the windy days, the beautiful greenery and flowers and the wildlife and the birds that are all around us. With our heart open to this acknowledgement, let us join together in a prosperity blessing. Divine love through me blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. I praise, give thanks, and am glad. And so it is. Amen. Unity is available to you on demand. If you haven't seen our opening, One Heart at a Time with Winnie Lee, and as I mentioned before, our meditation, I do hope you'll have time to join us. And if you're watching this Sunday morning, we do have Zoom fellowship at 10:30. We're going to close today with a song, We Are Unity by Richard Mekdeci. I think you'll enjoy it.